Hello and welcome to the Hopgood Hour. I'm State Senator Hoon-Yung Hopgood representing the 8th District. And as always, please feel free to contact my office with any questions or concerns that you may have regarding state government. You can write me a letter or send me an email or give me a phone call, and we'll do our best to get back with you and try to address your concerns. Today's edition of the Hopgood Hour is an issue that my community and my area has been dealing with for many years now, and it's the issue of the hazardous waste deep injection well, which has been located in the city of Romulus. And I'm pleased to have on today's show Mr. Burcroff, the new mayor of the city of Romulus, and Mr. Neil Silver, the attorney for the city of Romulus. And so welcome to today's show. Thank you for being on. First off, Mayor, congratulations on your new responsibilities. And I would just like to ask you to each introduce yourselves and tell us a little bit about yourself.
Absolutely. First, I guess, thank you, Senator, for having us here in Lansing today. I appreciate it. My name is LeRoy Burcroff. I've been a lifelong resident in Romulus. Spent 16 years on city council, 8 on planning. Family grew up and had business in Romulus for decades. So a little bit about myself, have a business background outside of the legislative body. Really looking forward to the new opportunities we have in the city of Romulus from the administrative side. And also we thank you for all your support that you've given the city of Romulus over the years. One of the things that we're excited about is trying to reach out and work with Lansing and other local surrounding governmental agencies to help us get good things done in our city. So thanks for having us here today.
Thank you.
Again, thank you, Senator, for having me back again, unfortunately for the same topic that I was here last time on this hazardous waste well. I feel like I'm a lifelong resident of Romulus, as I've been fighting this deep injection well since the mid-90s on behalf of the local communities. And so, again, I'm pleased to be here for you, but not pleased for the topic.
And that's completely understood, and we appreciate you both being on today's show and providing the viewers with a little bit of an update of what's going on. There have been developments in the proposal. Mayor, would you please just maybe talk about what's, from a big picture, what the deep injection well is all about?
Sure, and you know, as it was commented by Neil, this is an issue that unfortunately our community has been dealing with since the early 90s. You know, we've been through a lot of different processes. This is the second approval at this location that we're dealing with. And honestly, our citizens are just really at wit's end with it. It's been such a long process, and a lot of good people, not just myself and Neil, but there have been just hundreds of people that have been involved in this process from day one. And I want to thank them and compliment them. There have been a ton of people from local government and state government and federal government that have been along with the city of Romulus in this fight. So I don't want to miss that opportunity to thank many people who have supported this. You know, looking back over the years, what it's done, and especially now where there's kind of a lack of trust in government, is here we have 2 governmental agencies that are giving their stamp of approval on a process and kind of saying to our city, well, I'll tell you this, I got a message from a lady from the EPA, and I called her and I said, you know, she was giving me the news that they were reopening the well. And I voiced the concerns again, many of them that our citizens have voiced to me and been involved in. And you know, kind of her summarized comment back was, well, trust us, it's going to be okay. Well, you know, that goes so far in government. And when we've had agencies before go through the process, look at things and say, it's going to be okay, and the most recent leakage issue that had happened at that location, that doesn't bode well with a lot of citizens to say, it's going to be okay, they're going to be putting liquid waste into the ground in a Great Lakes state. And that's one thing I want to point out also. It's not just a Romulus issue. A lot of people think, well, because I'm the mayor of Romulus and we have a lot of passion for protecting Romulus, this is a whole state and regional issue. So what happens in Romulus can impact many other regions of our state and our whole region. So it's you know, here I'm coming into office. I think it was my first or second week that I get notified that you know, they were going to approve that. We have no control and say-so locally with that. So it's discouraging, but you know what? It's going to reinvigorate us to make sure that we're using every legal avenue that we can to do what we think is right, which is protect our city, our region, and our state.
So it most definitely is a Romulus issue, and again, your concern as the mayor and as a citizen before, and serving on city council is very important. But can you talk about specifically about why its location is a concern for the
Absolutely.
region and for the state?
Absolutely, and if they were to license and go through a process, that area is still a big concern for me. One of the things that's unique about Romulus is that we have major metropolitan airport right in the center. We have interstates coming through. We have rail coming through. So from a transportation perspective, we're very strong in this region. What that causes, as far as my concern, our citizens' concern, is that material that has to come to and from that well to be disposed of underground, there's just much more potential for things to happen. That particular area for road traffic is one of the most concentrated for truck traffic and car traffic in Wayne County. So, when you look at that and kind of going back to common sense, it doesn't put you at ease to tell the residents that everything's just going to go fine and it'll be okay.
Well, and it's the well is actually right next to each of those assets or pieces of infrastructure. I mean, it's not like it's in the same city. It's right next to it, isn't it?
It's right next to it. I mean, literally, it is just north of the airport. It's just south of 94. You have entryways, you have major entry points and exit points from I-94. That just adds to the potential things that could go wrong.
Well, I appreciate that. Mr. Silver, could you talk about, from a historical perspective, a little bit about some of the issue and some of the things that have happened and how Romulus and how the communities have tried to take this on and stop it from happening?
Yeah, thank you. I'm going to dovetail right into what the mayor was just saying. As this process was unfolding, believe it or not, these wells were not treated under the hazardous waste laws. And therefore, under hazardous waste laws, to site a well or any type of hazardous waste facility, you must go through a pretty rigorous site review board process. And this well was scheduled to be slated without any public input. It would have only gone through under the same Mineral Well Act and underground injection control at the Fed level, and which only focused on the below ground capabilities of this area in which the waste was to be injected. None of the above ground concerns were even fair game to be discussed or a determinant factor in the issuance of a permit or not. Thank God to predecessors in office at the time, we were quickly able to get an amendment which required the above ground facility to be regulated under Part 111, which required the site review board process, which this in fact went through. Unfortunately, again, as politics played in a role in it, as this was scheduled to go in front of the site review board through executive order, the site review board used to be a mandatory agency. Their decision was final. Through executive order, it was changed that any decisions of the executive board were recommendations only. This process, we did go through the process, and all of these above ground concerns were brought before the site review board. They were discussed. We had expert witnesses. We brought forth testimony. We played by the rules of the game. And a decision was rendered by that site review board not to site this well. The state overturned the recommendation of the site review board and issued the well over the objections.
Who at the state? Who at the state did that?
The DEQ. It would have been the Department of Environmental Quality. The executive order, I believe, was issued by Governor Engler back at the time, and Rick Harding was the Michigan Department of Environmental Quality chairperson. Once that permit was issued, they went and started their construction, and they then applied for their operating permit. And it was about 2005 that it took them to get their operating permit in place. They operated for about a short 10-month period. And I don't want to be quoted on all the facts here because it's, as you know, I get older, my memory fades in me, but I believe that it was the state agency went out to do a site inspection. Thank God they did. They found the gates open, no security at the gates. They went into one of the compressor rooms and found a gasket had leaked and that the hazardous substances were spraying. Currently, as they walked in, a release was occurring. So here's a facility that was not guarded, the gate was open, security not in place, and a leak was occurring at the time the state investigators went there. Thank God they did when they did. They immediately issued citations and shut them down. It's about this point, as the city has always stated, that this is not a viable project. There is no need for this project. There's not enough waste to make a profit in this business. And that had proved the case. The well was not making money. They were taking shortcuts. They were behind in their payments. And so essentially the Detroit Police Fire and Pension Board, who was the financier for this project, took an assignment of their operating permit. Again, I don't want to be technical, but you cannot assign a permit. Permits are earned through the scrutiny of the Department of Environmental Quality. You get issued permits. You don't take assignments without consent. That assignment was an illegal or improper act. The state at that point should have revoked the licenses. There should have been no license in effect. And anyone else who wanted to operate this well should have had to start from scratch, go back to the site review board, and in light of the new information, applied for that and have been granted it based upon the merits and based upon the city's input on those same concerns, which became realities to a certain extent. That did not happen. The state decided to do a minor modification of their permit and just substitute EGT in for EDS. EGT is the current operator of the well. So once again, as the city plays by the rules, shortcuts get taken or other actions get taken, which keeps making us have to work that much harder and frustrate the community even more.
Well, we appreciate that perspective and those details, and that sort of brings us to the more recent developments. And I'd ask you to each talk a little bit about what's happened more recently. You mentioned EGT, this new company. There has been allegations of corruption, of improper dealings, and so if you could just tell us a little bit about that leading up to the most recent approval of the wells to begin operating again.
Well, I would say this, and I'll let Neil comment after that. Going back to this public trust issue, when I'm talking to a resident and they're asking questions about this new operator, and I'm a business person, and typically in business you look at facts and what makes sense in a business. There is no need or value need to run a business for this waste. You have a person that doesn't have experience and training, and so to tell a citizen that it's going to be okay, they're a good operator, you know, have faith in us, you know, that's not very comforting for local government or for the community. So that's very, very frustrating. You know, we all know what's going on right now in government, from federal, state, and local. It's really tough for staffing to keep adequate for law enforcement, for other areas. We're trying to find new ways to make sure that we're getting the job done. As Neil explained, we happily, and thank you that inspector happened upon that, but now moving forward, are we going to have adequate oversight to ensure that it's not going to be like that or worse? So those are some of my concerns. Neil can address some of the specifics on the applicant that's operating.
Well, the applicant, Mr. Pappas, most people would know him from Greektown fame. And I really want to be careful here because a lot of what we're talking about is what we hear being leaked or, you know, through sources and papers, newspapers. But my understanding is that he is directly linked with Ms. Conyers, who is serving time for accepting bribes, and that bribe directly related to favorable treatment with respect to the issuance of this permit that we're talking about here today. If that is in fact true, my concern is it's not only illegal to receive a bribe, it is illegal to bribe a public official. and that someone should be able to benefit from the very activity that they undertook. If this is true, this is astonishing to me. It's unbelievable that this could occur.
So from my recollection, there's a court document. There's actually a paper that's been filed with the courts where Mr. Riddle, who was part of this Ms. Conyers and Mr. Pappas relationship, where he signed his name to a plea agreement saying, I'm going to go to prison because of what I'm affirming here in that document, which says that allegedly a bribe was paid by Mr. Pappas for favorable treatment from Ms. Conyers, who at that time was on the Detroit City Council, correct?
Correct.
And was also an appointee to the pension board.
And wife to Congressman.
Right, but you know, that's where the dots are. She was on council and a member of the board, and here you have this court document, which, you know, the court has to accept in some respect. Would that be correct?
I would think that it should be taken with a lot of credibility. And you know, just going back to rack my brain again, and I believe that we had always had the strong support from both of our senators and representatives on the federal level. But shortly after these events occurred, Mr. Conyers, or Representative Conyers, actually wrote a letter in support of the well, which always troubled us too. So with these things out there, you know, we never had a good taste in our mouth with respect to the previous operator. We had certain issues with respect to the people he was involved with and some violations of environmental laws, and we're not feeling any more comfortable today with respect to those issues.
Mayor, you know, ask you to chime in, but part of the concern with the previous operator was if something happened, they would maybe just disappear. That this company would disappear,
right?
And that's, you know, I believe in part how the pension system sort of took back ownership or control of the facility.
Yeah.
Wasn't that one of our concerns?
Yeah, that was definitely one of our concerns. And yeah, another concern is, quite honestly, and when the whole pension issue comes up, it's in my opinion, a bad investment. There are people that have a pension that they're counting on, that they continue to invest in, and to me, just a failed business venture. So it's concerning for those as well.
And I mean, you know, Barbara McQuaid, who was the U.S. Attorney in this area, has spent a tremendous amount of time, along with the FBI, in terms of investigating different concerns related to the pension system, related to some other public official dealings, and so more recently, this past spring, there were indictments involving two of the non-elected officials, but appointed members of the pension system, in relationship to this very same project. If I remember correctly, the allegation in the indictment, again, a court paper, not anything that is hearsay or rumor or anything like that, but it's something that they said, this is why we're bringing these charges against the pension system board members, was that chips, that $20,000 worth of casino chips allegedly were transferred from Mr. Pappas to these two pension board system members, again, for the same type of thing, for favorable treatment in relationship to this new EGT company, which Mr. Pappas is a principal of. I mean, doesn't that add more concern about the alleged corruption that's been around this issue?
Well, to me, and you're an elected official and I'm an elected official, and we're trying to reinstill faith and confidence in our officials. And especially during these times, just hearing the story and some of the comments you made about court documents, things that exist putting dots together. If I'm a resident home watching this, I'm going, this smells bad. Okay, I mean, it's pretty common sense. That kind of process should not happen. And you're right, there's been a lot of effort into investigation, into corruption in our whole region and different parts of the country. And if we're going to ever build confidence, more confidence in our local officials, our state and federal officials, we've got to do a better job of when we have situations like this, getting to the bottom of it, cleaning it up, and moving forward with integrity.
What can be done about this situation of the alleged corruption or the alleged improper dealings?
Well, and fortunately for us, we're in America and everyone is innocent until proven guilty. I would urge our federal and state government to immediately, and if they're not already, to commence a detailed investigation to see whether these things are in fact true. And if they aren't true, to not allow, again, if true, not allow anyone to benefit from improper or illegal activity, especially at the risk of the community that's directly in line to bear the brunt of anything that could happen in the event that there is a disaster. It really is amazing to me. We're continually told that we're not allowed to do this, we're not allowed to do that, when we've made arguments that no, this is the only thing that matters. We're only talking about the below ground issues here today. We're only talking about, public health and safety issues. There's never been a forum for us to discuss these. There's no open meetings. There is no forum for the community to say this is wrong because for these reasons, these are not reasons to deny a hazardous waste well at present.
The forums that have been made available, people have expressed all these sorts of concerns, and the agencies then say, well, it's not within our purview.
Correct.
Right? I mean, isn't that frustrating?
Completely. Everything when you're talking about an ultra-hazardous activity such as this. Something that will be, once injected, will never be uninjected. It's there. This is permanent. This is not like talking about a storage facility where hazardous waste can be stored in. If you find there's a problem or if something happens, you just take the barrels and you load them back on a truck and you take them else someplace safe. Once this stuff is injected into the ground, it's not, we hope, it can't be captured again. This is a permanent destruction of that formation, and if it's not safe, there's nothing that can be done to prevent the risks to the people because of it's not being safe. And so everything should be on the table before it's allowed.
So two updates. Myself, the state senator for the area, and Representative Doug Geis, who's the state representative for the city of Romulus. We've done a couple of things. We've asked the Attorney General about the standing of Mr. Pappas in relationship to these questions, and the Attorney General said there's an ongoing federal investigation. Again, Mr. Pappas has not been charged. These other people have been, and in fact, gone to prison. But there's an ongoing investigation, so the state wasn't going to be entering into that. But what the Attorney General from Michigan did say was that even if Mr. Pappas were charged and convicted in a court of law that he did do things improperly and illegally, in fact, that the state lacks the legal authority to revoke the permits. Isn't that a problem? I mean, isn't that almost?
That reminds me of the old stories about trying to teach your children, that play right, play fair, treat people right, and you'll get treated the same. This shows that if you don't play by the rules, that you can benefit.
Get rewarded.
That you still stand a benefit, even if you're caught, and that's just the wrong message to send to anyone.
Yep. So we've clearly pursued legislation in the legislature to give the state that explicit authority to be able to revoke or deny in some instance where the permit hasn't already been issued, but to deny in that instance where a conviction in a court of law was brought to bear, and we're working on that, of course, and through the process. And so Just wanted to make sure that the viewers were aware of that. What other sorts of efforts do we think that we might be able to bring to bear?
Well, I guess one, and I'll let Neil touch on it a little bit, one of the concerns has been for quite some time, as Neil mentioned, once these, the waste is in the ground, there's no retrieving it. The concern that our residents have also is, where is it going to go? And so that's still a big concern moving forward, and I guess maybe you can comment on that.
Sure. The permits themselves are quite clear on their face. All three permits that are involved here, the one federal and the two state permits, say on their face that that these permits in no way affect the rights of third parties, which means they don't give any permission for them to impact third parties. And trespass, by their own model, the contamination will travel, using their conservative approach, 10 miles from the wellhead in a direction, believe it was mostly southeast, but in a big old oval shape. So all of those properties at some point will have hazardous waste below their property, thus forever barring them from drilling into that formation and rendering the stigma that that stuff is underneath their property. We already know of one instance where a business that was not really creating hazardous waste, Sun Pipeline, wished to drill into that formation merely to use what we would call the natural resources contained in there, the brine, so that they could use it to force gas through and up and down in their storage fields. And they were denied that permit because it would be creating hazardous waste, and therefore they lost that right to be able to use, again, a natural resource that they own below their own land. So this trespass, we believe this is a trespass, and this is an avenue that we're still investigating as to what we want to do about it.
And of course, my opinion is that Attorney Barbara McQuaid needs to see this through and make sure that everyone who's party to these very serious concerns and charges are brought to bear, that justice is done so that the public is not further jeopardized by some of these activities, and so that's something else that needs to happen. Fortunately, we're just about out of time. I appreciate both of you for being on the show. Once again, congratulations, Mayor Burcroff. Thank you to the viewers for tuning in. This has been another edition of the Hopgood Hour. Once again, please feel free to contact me with any questions or concerns, and thank you for tuning in.